California, which belonged to a country called Mexico. And before it belonged to Mexico, it belonged to the Spanish Empire. It was part of Spain. So a lot of the earliest European explorers out here were Spanish. So, yes, they were Catholic. The nearest colonial capital at the time would have been Santa Fe. The first Europeans to pass through this area did so relatively recently in terms of colonial history anyway. No one of European descent was anywhere near here until 1775. So they left from Santa Fe. Their names were Dominguez and Escalante. In the fall of 1775, they were tasked by the governor of New Mexico to find a land route between Santa Fe and the nearest deep water port, which is in what's today Monterey, California. So that was a long trip. They went north into Colorado and then turned west, came through what's now Utah. They were the first to encounter the Utes and the Navajo. They first noted a lot of this land. So they were also the first to lay eyes on the La Salle Mountains. And when they did that, by the time they got here, it was July of 1776, when nothing else of any importance was happening. But back then, so they got here, and I keep telling you how hot it gets in the summer. So it would have been 175,000 degrees down here, roughly. But then they looked up in those mountains, and they saw little patches of white up there. And they went, ay caramba, there's no way that could be snow up there. It's way too caliente here. So there was only one other thing they imagined it could be, which was La Salle, salt. They thought it was salt up there. They were wrong. It was snow. But they were stretched thin as far as personnel and resources was going as it was. So they didn't really have, couldn't really afford to take a detour up there and check. And as I've mentioned back in Arches, there's plenty of salt locally in the geology. They would have seen some of that salt layer. So it wasn't a terrible guess. The science of geology barely existed at that time, and they certainly weren't following it. So, not a bad guess, but it was wrong.